Today I want to talk about Power BI implementation plans, and this is something that I create for big projects that last for a few months, and I create them for big companies. So I've created those for some of my clients like Google and Teleperformance, and I will show one implementation plan that I created for Google. I'll explain the process that I follow. And before I start, I just want to say, me and my team have done a bit more than 1,000 Power BI dashboards for 600 plus clients, and we don't create those plans for everyone. It doesn't make sense to create Power BI implementation plans for projects that last 1 or 2 weeks, because this time is better invested into doing an additional revision for a client. However, for big projects, these kind of plans can give some directions. They can help to minimize the amount of rework which is involved during the project. They also serve as kind of a wireframe that the clients can show to their team. So I'll explain how clients use these plans later. So let me start by explaining the process. So in this particular example, Google were fined 100 million euros in the European Union for missing a piece of legislation that came out. This happens around 2021, and they basically pivoted to collecting data on every legislation that came out, every product that was affected, and the impact, whether it was positive, negative, or neutral. So I was tasked to create a dashboard that effectively visualized the overall impact of all of these legislations on Google products. So I started with basically creating a list of business questions that the client wanted to answer, and we had a call. I basically strived to understand what they're looking for, and based on my understanding, I created this list of business questions. So the first version of my document was just a list of 20 business questions. I then started grouping them logically into groups, and this is how we came up with our page structure. So I grouped questions into pages, and then we took one step back to identify the formula that was used to answer a business question from a client. So I created the second column next to every business question to answer, what was the formula that should be used. Finally, we put an entry for which visual type we would use, and underneath we would put a screenshot from our previous work, or just a screenshot we found online. This essentially helped the client to understand the value behind every graph, so the reasoning why we created every graph, and it also helped them to ensure adoption. So after we created this document, they went back to their team and showed them the document. And the question they asked was, if the dashboard looked like this, would you use it? And that was very important because, they had to say either yes or no. And, once they got the buy-in from their team, we moved forwards with the technical implementation. Basically, overview page is not a good one to start with. So you'd create that at the end. Once you have your detailed pages, you would put a couple of insights from every page into an overview page. But if you think about it, the first thing that a user wants to see is high priority issues, the ones that need to be looked at and addressed immediately. They wanted to understand what type of issues was affecting Google. So whether those were issues related to user-generated content, or to data security, or freedom of speech. And we analyzed the number of issues by all of those issue types. So we then analyzed the issues affecting every product. So we essentially created a table with conditional formatting to analyze number of issues per product. Then the next question was when we need to be concerned. So this is something that we calculated based on the date when the legislation goes live. And this is like the number of legislations that go live by month. So 1 month from now, 2 months from now, etc. And then, some legislations that went out affected multiple products. So those were the legislations that we needed to take a look at as soon as possible. By addressing one legislation, we could cover multiple products. So that's basically another piece of insight that we did. And then finally, the number of titles by country. So who is responsible? Like the manager in which country will be looking into each of those issues. And we basically did a similar layout for other pages as well. So we wanted to make sure there is consistency across all of the pages. So there were some legislations that positively affected Google. So we wanted to highlight the opportunities there. So we created a page for potential impacts. And then we created a separate page for potential black swans. So issues that, have low probability to happen, but high impact if they happened. So we essentially created a separate page where they could see those potential black swans and to keep a closer eye on how this kind of legislation is passing through the legislation bodies in every country. And finally, we looked at the US specific issues, the geography of issues, whether, which countries were affected the most. And it's not surprising that countries where there is a lot of censorship, like Brazil and China, they were basically where we found most of the issues. So that's an example of a Power BI implementation plan for you. So now I'm going to talk about a couple of pitfalls with Power BI implementation plans. First of all, plans can change. Even if you plan all of this, there are still situations where business just moves in a way where you need to pivot from the plan. And my first bit of advice here would be try to create those plans around processes that don't change often. So more stable processes, right? If the process changes a lot, if you're experimenting a lot with the process, creating this plan is not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to create a first dashboard, then iterate from it and create the second dashboard, and to do this project on the ongoing basis, because you don't need to measure your process once. You need a lot of different ways to measure your process. So the second pitfall from that plan is user adoption. So imagine you do the plan, you implement Power BI into your company, and then people don't use it as much as you would want. And Unfortunately, it's something that I've seen happen throughout my career. One thing you can do to ensure this doesn't happen is to take the implementation plan to your team and ask them, if a Power BI dashboard looked like this, would you use it? And if they say yes, then you move ahead with implementation. If they say something like, oh, I don't know if I need a Power BI dashboard, then you need to talk to them a bit more and decide whether the team as a whole sees value in Power BI dashboards or not, right? So the third pitfall that I see companies fall into is the lack of technical Power BI skills, because once those dashboards are developed, people need to be familiar with the interface of Power BI in order to use them. So I would recommend to take some user level Power BI training, maybe not even like admin level where you would be designing the reports, but at least user level where you can get familiar with where to find the data that you need. Sometimes when companies are designing Power BI reports themselves, there are other issues like slow loading time for Power BI dashboards or bad user interface, so maybe the graphs don't look as intuitive. All things like that can harm user adoption. So I have separate guides on how to ensure good user interface and fast loading time. So if you're interested, then go to our blog. I will try to leave links on this video as well, and you can read it there. Final thing I'm going to say is it's important to make sure that you know how you get your money back from your Power BI investment. So before you even make the plan, you need to make sure that after your Power BI implementation, eventually you'll get some return on your investment. In my opinion, you can get return on investment in one of three ways. First, you can save on licensing costs. So maybe you're replacing Power BI with, you're replacing Tableau with Power BI. Tableau licenses are more expensive. So you would essentially save a couple hundreds or maybe like $1,000+ per month if you switch to Power BI. So this one is easy. Or maybe you have a process that generates you revenue, and if you manage that process a bit better by having, a Power BI dashboard to help you analyze it, maybe like your revenue would increase and you would get your payback on your investment eventually this way. It's also possible to mitigate risk through Power BI dashboards. For example, I've had a case where my client was using very expensive equipment and they needed to keep an eye on this equipment, where it is, in what condition it is, and to make sure that equipment doesn't get damaged or lost. So they used Power BI dashboard to ensure that they save on those potential unexpected costs. And again, you get your payback by reducing these costs throughout the years. And finally, you could be having a reporting process where it takes you a lot of manual time or manual work to maintain your reports. If this is the case, then you can save on labor costs to maintain this report, and you can invest those labor hours somewhere else. So this way you make your team more productive, and essentially you get your payback on your investment through those two factors. So make sure that you will get your money back from investing to Power BI. And if you feel that you would, then would recommend to design the implementation plan, then take it to a team for approval, then go with the technical implementation, and designing those Power BI dashboards, and then you can get into sharing your Power BI reports. It's likely that you are new to Power BI and you don't know much about Power BI licensing. I wouldn't worry about licensing too much for your Power BI implementation, because if you're implementing only one report, then it's likely you won't have too many users for your report. So Power BI charges you on per user basis. Right now it's $10 per user per month. However, they're increasing it to $14 per user per month. So this basically means that if you have 10 users that view your reports, your cost is going to be $100 per month. So again, if you're developing just one report, it's likely you won't be deploying Power BI across all of your company. It's probably just one department. So the costs are not that big to worry about. If you're developing like a dozen reports, so if you're covering like more than just your team, maybe your broader team with Power BI reports, then I would look into Power BI costs before jumping into implementation. So I hope that you found this video useful, and if you're interested in discovering and reading more about Power BI implementation plans, I have published an article on this topic on our website, which I will also link in this video, so feel free to check it out, and I hope this video helps you with your Power BI implementations. Thank you, and see you later.